and or 1700. And by the way, those will be the numbers you will use to be a part of this evening's discussion. Again, thank you all very much for joining us. This is your voice in the community, Tallk that get results. With regard to your participation in the show, we encourage you to call in on the numbers listed 1-869-469-1616 and or 1700. Here's a suggestion. You have a question or comment, perhaps you can get a pencil, piece of paper, write it down so that you're well organized. And when you get in on the show, you take as little time as possible so we can accommodate as many of you as we can. We ask only, first of all, you respect yourselves and then respect others, because we will not accept anything we deem that's not within our broadcast standards. But we encourage you to always be forceful with your point. Again, thank you all very much for joining us. Your voice in the community, Tallk that get results. And you can also follow our live video stream of this program on our YouTube channel on Vaughan Radio and our Facebook page on Vaughan Radio. Thank you all again. This evening, the Honorable Spencer Brand, good evening.
Good evening, Webbo, and a very pleasant good evening to my fellow panelists. A very wonderful evening to all Nivisions and Kithishans here in the Federation, and to those who are further afield in diaspora, those in the British and US Virgin Islands, in the United States or Canada, all the way over the pond in England. I hope that you are having a very wonderful, wonderful evening tonight. Webbo, I want to take this opportunity to say thanks for the invitation tonight off the bat, and I am indeed delighted to be here. I want to take this opportunity to offer my condolences to all those families who are in mourning tonight. I know we have a number of families here on the island of Nevis who are in mourning. Immediately, the Hendrickson and Wallace family. We also have the Roach family, the Shiverton family, and of course the family of our former matron. Matron, yes, the name eluded me a moment. I certainly, and all those other families who are in mourning tonight, those came to me readily. I believe, Webbo, that while we understand that this is a journey that we all will have to take at some point, there is a season for everything. It is never an easy intervention in person's family life. And I certainly want to say to all those family that we remember their loved ones, and we hope that they can also remember their loved one with fond memories, despite the pain and the agony of the passing of their loved one. Webbo, I want to say also to those persons who are celebrating tonight, whether it's a birthday, a wedding anniversary, or some accomplishment in their life, certainly are hoping that they're having a wonderful evening, that they have had a wonderful day. I certainly hope that they can, while they enjoy their celebration, that they can reflect and thank our Creator for blessing them with another milestone. Webbo, it's the start of another school year, and I want to take this opportunity to congratulate the education officials. I think over the last 2 years we have had some testing time in our education system because of the COVID pandemic, and we really had to pivot. And I believe that this new school year, perhaps things may not necessarily get back to normal, but I believe that they would operate in a kind of different mode. And I want to wish the education officials, all of the teachers and the auxiliary staff, the parents and students, a wonderful and successful new school year. I want to encourage our children to take advantage of this opportunity that have been availed to them and grasp it with both hands and feet, and observe as much as they possibly can. And I hope that at the end of it they can look back and say that it was important for them to take the necessary instructions from the education officials. Webbo, as I said earlier, I want to thank you for the invitation, and I'm indeed delighted to be here tonight.
Conrad Nair Liebert, good evening.
Good evening, Webbo, and good evening to my colleagues around the table, and to the hard-working staff here at the Powerhouse of the Eastern Caribbean. Fun Radio. A pleasant good evening to you all. Webbo to all my friends home and abroad. Osborne in Connecticut, friends in Toronto. Welcome you guys to the program. Webbo, once again, as usual, we come together to discuss the matters affecting the people and how much I like to have these conversations. I would always encourage people to call in on the program and express their views. Yes, it's the start of another school year. It's a very serious time for the kids and the parents. I hope that all parents was able to were able to deal with that cost of preparing and getting the children all ready for school, and of course not to forget to implant in them the importance of education, the importance of being a role model in these little societies, the importance of basically doing good and meeting that threshold that upon which I suppose a good society is based. Webbo, I want to thank you very much for inviting me once again, and I'm looking forward to have a good conversation this evening.
Edric W. Stan, good evening.
Good evening, Webbo. Good evening to my fellow panelists. Good evening to the people of St. Kitts, and more particularly the gracious people of Nevis, those who will be viewing us on the platforms, YouTube, Facebook, as the case might be, and throughout the entire world indeed. Well, let me take this opportunity to talk about those who have gone to the great beyond. The Master has called, and as a result, we have no choice when he calls. Matron Diaz, Bertram Roach, and now my cousin-in-law, Mrs. Shiverton, unfortunately, they have paid their dues. They have done great deeds to the society or within the society, and of course we do appreciate the role that they played. Matron Diaz carry her share of weight in this community. Can't forget when my dear wife passed. She was there as a pillar of comfort for me, and as a result, the burden of her passing was made lighter by her comments and her persistent being to my side or at my side. May her soul rest in eternal peace, including the others. Webbo. Webbo,
of course, we know that we are in the height of the hurricane season, and I believe that by now all of us would recognize that the Atlantic really is heating up. Really, we have a number of systems that appear to be that they would turn into hurricane, varied categories, and I want to appeal to our people to make sure that they pay attention to the various weather reports. I know that there is a lot of sources of weather information, but I am appealing to our people to make sure that they pay attention to the various local media houses and official weather updates. I would also want to suggest to our people that this is the month of September, and traditionally it's the peak of the hurricane season, and I would hope and suggest that if at this point we have not necessarily finished our preparedness, that we ought to do so as expeditiously as possible. I believe that over the next few weeks We will see some additional activities, and we have also now been seeing that one is, getting itself organized in the Atlantic. Whether it will directly impact us or not, I hope it don't. But I want our people to be on guard, pay attention, keep their ears and eyes open as to what is happening as it regards to our hurricane season, especially over the next few weeks, because things can change very rapidly. This is a phenomenon that we face annually. It's a phenomenon that we have certainly had our own experiences here on the island of Nevis and in the Federation and throughout the region, and we have seen the devastation that these hurricanes can cause. And I'm hoping that our people can be as prepared as possible. We are a small economic space, and these hurricanes can devastate our economy in a matter of hours. We have also seen over the years that in other areas we have seen significant loss of life. But we are hoping that throughout this hurricane season, God will be so merciful and gracious to us that nothing really comes our way. But I really want to appeal to our people to be on guard. I really want to appeal to our people to take note of the various advisories here from VAN and to our various disaster preparedness entities from an official source. And I think that once we can do that, then we can, the best way possible, try and stay ahead of these storms. If they come, we will just have to mitigate the best way we can against them, because it's a force of nature that we really don't have much defense against. So, Webbo, I like I said, I just wanted to say to our people to be prepared, get prepared if you are not necessarily prepared as yet, and to listen and listen and listen.
Well, what we have before us regarding those people who were allegedly, not allegedly caught, they were caught, but we are not sure if those people are the right people, but you're guilty until proven innocent, or the other way around.
You're innocent
until proven guilty. And this is referring to those alleged culprits that robbed the Ram supermarket, and as a result, based on what we have learned via the news media, that they have gotten a few of them in the slammer so far. They have
assisting with the investigation.
Assisting with the investigation, and it really, those people should be, their photographs should be published, so we know who they caught, who they got to, even though when they got to let them go. All right. Listen, the police department, our law enforcement officers, they've got an ordeal of the most grievous kind to go out there, put themselves on the line, put themselves in danger. Based on what I understood, they had to really chase these people and apprehend them. And nobody wants to be apprehended after they have been involved in such an act. And therefore, who knows what they are carrying? I'm talking about the proliferation of firearms in our community. And as a result, we should get to know who the bad boys are. See their photographs. So I hope we get some calls on it, on that aspect of the negative section within our community with these bad boys. The Singles Nevis Patriot, I'm so disappointed. So disappointed. Every time I hear the name, and based on the dissertation coming from the avenue of information. When I hear Sinkers Nevis Patriot name called, I looking forward to hear that we have won, but sadly we are not in the winning column, and it tells us that something has gone awry with our cricket to the extent where our teams are not doing as well as we have done in the past. Before, all we have to do is to figure out how badly we beat them. But that is no longer the norm, simply because somewhere along the line we are not putting out the kinds of effort in terms of cricket and cricketers' expectations, as the case might be. So I'm applauding, employing, asking, beseeching the coaches and the entire cricket establishment. Let us go back to the drawing board and figure out where we have gone off the rail, where we can't enjoy our cricket like we have done in the past. Like I said, when we hear West Indies playing or regional cricket playing, we have within the region teams of different region would back, but based on the results are not what we are expecting. Hence, something got to be done radically to turn this or cricket game around, not only locally but regionally and internationally.
Well, you know, Mr. Stanley, it's this franchise kind of cricket is don't beat us too much. Don't beat. Let us not feel too bad in a sense, you know, because this franchise kind of cricket tends to take control out of our hands. Who owned the franchise? Somebody we don't know, and he or she, the arrangements are made which exclusive of probably local cricketing authorities and probably even local government input and so forth. You know, if you look at the Patriots, there isn't one individual from St. Kitts Nevis who've been playing for the Patriots, and I wonder why. But somebody said, well, you know, it's franchise and they buy who they want, they play who they want, and somehow it looks like nobody from the Federation have made the grade, you know. And so, yes, you know, they represent our flag, and so we feel really bad about it. But to me, it's a perfect example of what probably not supposed to be happening, in a sense that we're supposed to be giving our cricketers exposure. We're supposed to be looking at upcoming talents, and from these regional cricket, the CPL and so forth, you know, making, you know, strong recommendation and choices as it relates to young West Indians player. And so it's a problem. It's a problem here, because here we are, you know, there's nobody from St. Kitts Nevis getting any exposure or experience from what is taking place, yet they represent our flag. The youngsters are not doing well relatively at all. I think they have lost about 7 matches so far, and we feel really bad about it. But how much control do we have over the whole situation? You know, I was told that the local governments have to pay a huge sum just to put, you know, the Nevis name on the shoulder, or the St. Kitts name on the shoulder of the jerseys, of the uniform, you know. But it looks like they doesn't have that kind of input to decide upon who plays, you know, who actually represent the federation. And I suppose based on the fact that you have to pay so much, it's your country. I think some kind of rearrangement probably need to take place, if we are to look forward to and recognize talents, young talents coming out of these places, I really and truly think that some stipulation should have been made that there is an amount of or a percentage of players from the local island. That is just my feel. But we see here the Patriots have no one at all from the Federation actually playing thus far. I don't know if that might change, but that's the situation for now, really.
Well, I hope that the franchise or franchisee, as the case might be, would concentrate on the business aspect of it, but the coaches got a responsibility to, in fact, identify the talent, to mold and to harness the talent and put in their time so that we can get the best end product out of the participants or the players. Like I said, the franchise is on the one hand a business entity, but we must never lose sight of the fact that coaches, managers, players, they've got to go there and put their heads down and bring back the bacon. We're not getting it. They're not getting it. We have to find a solution because, like I said, our cricket is at the bottom of the barrel. Bottom to the extent where we're not getting the end results that we desire. We can no longer go out and celebrate.
Stanley, and I of course, the performance of the Singles and Nevis Patriots for the 2023 CPL tournament, of course, has been disappointing. And just a few nights ago, they made what, 220?
Which was, when I heard that 220 score, go ahead, Mr.
220, and I say, okay, well, this is a decent enough score. And looking at the game, I marveled really as to the destruction and the kind of muscle that individuals like Cornwall and others placed against the bowling of the Singles and Nevis Patriot and made 220 look like a walk in the park. I don't know if what we are seeing is as a result of whether or not no one from Singles and Nevis is playing. Could it have made a difference? Maybe, maybe not. But I think that it just appeared to me that the Singles and Nevis Patriots, perhaps the team may not be as balanced as it could be, and I would leave that for the pundits and the cricket analysis and so on and so forth. But I think that on paper the team is not really a bad team. I just feel that I've looked at a number of the games and I felt that there may have been some tactical errors. But again, I don't necessarily want to try and do Sunday afternoon quarterbacking, but I think that there could have been certain things that could have been done differently. The results are not what Singles and Nevis Patriot fans are satisfied with. I believe that it is going to be very difficult for them now to qualify. I think that from the minute this tournament is over, that I believe that the owners and the coaches and the other staff members would have to go back to the drawing board and see where they may have erred. Of course, we would have loved to see someone from St. Kitts and Nevis playing. Would it have made a difference based on what I have seen from the other team? Maybe, maybe not. But I want to look at this CPL. It's a business venture, and I think that the various islands where these games are being played benefit significantly from the competition. I went to a number of games over on St. Kitts, and some of the folks who I saw on the boats going over are individuals who would have returned home specifically to watch CPL cricket. So I think that there is that business component of it that the various islands benefit from. I also noticed that there is a heavy emphasis that is being played on the marketing of the various islands during the various intermissions, expressing the tourism attraction of the various islands and the region. This is a global phenomenon, and I think that while we are not necessarily satisfied with the return from the St. Kitts and Nevis Patriot, I believe from the business side of it, we can see uptake in possibly tourism, and in other areas. I think that it offers some business opportunity for a number of businesses, and I believe that we have in the region international players from Australia, from South Africa, from Pakistan, from England, and I believe that when they return to their various camps, they are going to spread the word about St. Kitts and Nevis, about Barbados, and I think that would have some spin-off for the region. So I am hoping that we can look at it in a much broader perspective, in a much broader view. That I feel that over time, and this has been what the 10th or 11th year, I feel that over time the region has certainly seen some uptake and uptick in, and I am saying it very carefully and guardedly because I do not necessarily have any data to back it up, but I believe that we would have benefited over the years from persons coming from different parts of the world to enjoy CPL, persons who may have come and enjoy sun, sea and sand based on what they would have seen on the TV and in the advertisement. So I am hoping that we can perhaps look at it from that angle. But as you are correct, Mr. Starley, the returns of the St. Kitts and Nevis Patriot is painful. I must say it's painful because for a team to make 220 runs in 20 overs, and then the other team went there and make it look like a walk in the park, that was painful. We have always known that Barbados have been a place where a lot of runs. It's a run feast, a run fest.
Gary Sobers.
So 220, perhaps could it have been 250? Would they have chased it down? You never know. But I think that the competition Naya spoke about, no one is playing from St. Kitts and Nevis. I am not so sure if CPL cricket is a good start for any young cricketer to really develop, to be honest with you. It's a tournament that perhaps may not be best suited for a youngster who want to make a career out of cricket, because I believe that 50 overs and test match cricket, even though they may not be playing so much test match, but I believe for greater development of our players, if it was up to me, I probably would not necessarily rush to have an 18-year-old, a 19-year-old, a 17-year-old be so quick to enter into CPL. Yes, there may be one or two who can be around the camp, but for real development of one-day cricket and test cricket, I personally do not believe that CPL is a tournament for them to the kind of structure of it, the kind of pressure situation, you may not necessarily be able to get the kind of development. But saying that, there is also a flip side of it. To be in the camp with some of these world-renowned cricketers, you can derive some what I call knowledge transfer. That for me may be the only benefit. But for a real cricketer development, I'm not so sure if CPL is the best competition for a youngster.
I kind of beg to differ on that last point there. I think the limited overs, 20 overs, T20s, it's not going to go away. It's a form of cricket.
We understand that. It's here to stay. We understand it's here to stay.
And I feel like the CPL can be a stepping stone for such cricketers. There are cricketers today who don't have any interest at all in tests. They are professional T20 players. Professional, and
yes,
and there are few who are playing in the CPL as well. I think it's a stepping stone. It's a great vehicle for exposure of young talent, and as I say, it's here to stay. And some players won't go beyond that. Some players doesn't have any interest beyond the limited overs, and so they are shaped. They are trained and they have developed skills in that particular type of cricket, and so I look at it still as a stepping stone and a vehicle for exposure. Really, you can identify young talent, because I mean this is a global phenomenon. It's played in every region, and highly competitive type of cricket. It is even more supported, it looks like, in terms of fan base than the
that is the kind of cricket we used to call any man a tip.
Any man a tip, yeah.
That is what this is.
Test match and so forth. But I do feel for those who have such interest, and there are many, the CPL, yes, is a stepping stone.
Well, like I've said, I don't know what coaches' plans are, but it begins with them. It begins with the player and the coaches. So if the player has the interest in playing the game, and the coach or coaches are not up to speed, the development of that particular player or players, as the case might be, would not reach to the optimum or the maximum skill as a player. So what do we do? Do we look at some of the old cricketers that have been playing cricket within our local tournaments or the region, as the case might be? Again, I feel the weight should be on the coaches, and if the coach has the wherewithal to understand what the assignment is, the coach should be able to go back to the drawing board, look at the history, read, figure out what the old greats did to attain the kind of skillful performance that we have been accustomed to, and ultimately bring about the end product. I can't blame the organization in terms of the management. That's not where the problem is. The problem is with the coach or coaches and the development skills. How come they can't find those talent anymore or mold those talent anymore? Why? The men in the past who played the game, I'm talking about batsmen, bowlers, as the case might be, who did marvelously. Are you telling me that we don't have the physical strength anymore? Are you telling me we don't have the brain power anymore? Cricket is a head game, and if you are able to look for the talent, you have to look among those with the level of intelligence and the skills, maybe the physical structure of the body element. The foods we eat shouldn't be any different from what those people in the past ate. So where are we falling down? We have to make a concerted effort to go back to the drawing board and to look and see what we must do to bring about those old talents and skills where we are able to appreciate our game as we have done in the past.
I would conclude by saying there is something not too good to be said or can be said about Leeward Islands cricket. Seeing, looking at the participation of Leeward Islands cricketers in the CPL, you know, how much we have from Antigua in the CPL? A big cricketing nation like Antigua. We got, I think Joseph is from Antigua. And then nobody from the Federation of St. Kitts Nevis. So to me, it looks like something can be said about Leeward Islands cricket.
From Antigua, yeah?
Oh?
Cornwall from
Oh,
Antigua.
Cornwall is from Antigua. I thought he was from St. Lucia. Oh, that's great. But I think Leeward Islands cricket have it's hard to find a word, but deteriorate a little bit. It looks like, you know, and I think that's where there is, you know, great concern, I suppose, because we are not represented in the West Indies team in any of the forms as we used to, you know, and I think something can be said about that, you know. I don't think any one of us here, you know, are expert in the game, but as people who have, you know, cricket in our veins, who know the game very well, St. Kitts Nevis people on the Leeward Islands, the whole Caribbean, I would say something needs to be done, I suppose. I see Leeward Islands cricket have deteriorated because the Trinidadians are doing it, Jamaicans, Barbados, I mean, they're doing it. What happened to the Leeward Islands players? What happened?
Well, it is
the same question you're asking, Mr. Stanley.
right across the board, from the local up to the international. Something has gone radically wrong. I am saying to you, those people who played the game in the past, were they smarter than who we got now? More intelligent? I always maintain that cricket is a head game, and if we cannot produce the talent that we have had in the past, we have to go back to the drawing board as to how do we get the infusion in terms of intellect. The foods, again, as I have said earlier, which earlier cricketers who played the game at that level and the performance which they brought to the fore was highly acceptable but we have somewhere along the line dropped the ball, and I am trying to figure out the body structure is no different from that of those of the past. Again, we have to find the brain and the talent, and I lay it at the footstep or doorstep of the coach or coaches and the players. They're not stepping up to the plate to do what is expected of them, and consequently we will continue to fail and fail miserably.
So, Mr. Stanley, you spoke a lot about the coaches. So you lay perhaps the non-performance at the feet of the coaches.
Right.
But Mr. Stanley, I don't necessarily agree with you, and I'll tell you why. We have these various franchises, and they have this management structure and the physiotherapists and the coaches, and I think that they can put the necessary mechanisms in place and the strategies. But Mr. Stanley, the players must go on the field of play and execute.
But if the training is not there, if the training is absent,
Training of the coaches?
no, the players which should come from the coaches. The raw talent must be identified, harnessed, and put into a level of production, for the want of a better word, where we get the desired results. And if you're not getting the desired results, it means something has gone radically wrong. I don't think, again, that those players of the past were smarter than current people we are.
Mr. Stanley, let me ask you a question. The captain go out, the captain set a particular field, and the bowler bowl totally contrary to the field that is set, and every minute the ball goes over the boundary. You're going to blame the coach for that?
The bowler must be trained enough to follow how the field is set.
I hear you, but Mr. Stanley, you...
When we played cricket at the level at which we played, we set the field and look, the ball is coming to you, so look out for it. Of course, this is not at the advanced level,
Same principle.
but the fundamentals have not changed. So what went wrong? Where did we go wrong? I'm saying to you, if the physical structure of the batsman or the bowler, as the case might be.
Let me get this for you. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Yes, good evening. Good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, topic is very, very interesting. And I'd like to join in, but, I'd like to ask a question. The coaching that Mr. Stanley is talking about, not one division player got onto the West Indies team because of coaching. We didn't have any coaches in those days. The thing is, now we have coaches. Our cricketers can't get in the way. We didn't have any coaches in the earlier days. Now we have West Indies have coaches, everybody has coaches, but we are not producing any cricketers. So the problem cannot be the coaches. That's my point at the moment.
Let the caller finish.
Yeah, I think I'll finish for now because we don't have any coaches. We didn't have any coaches, but now we have coaches, and the cricketers are not going anywhere.
The system was different, and the system was different.
But you are the one who's talk about coaches.
Well, I'm saying to you, simply because we have stepped up to the plate, we are at a certain level of advancement, and the coach aspect has come in to the game. We must utilize that new invention or new aspect of the coaches, but we didn't get aboard the West Indies team, not because of coaches or the lack thereof. It was a system of what they call insularity. That is what kept us out of the game. In spite of not having coaches, insularity is what played and kept us out of the game. But at that time, we played very good cricket. Very good cricket. So where are we? We now got the coaches. So caller, if you are still listening, I'm saying to you, the coaches are now another aspect of the heightened expectation of the game, which is a plus. So therefore we should be better than before, but we're worse. So I don't want you to miss the aspect of insularity, which kept us out of the game at that level, West Indies level, and identify where we are now. We got coaches who are supposed to be able to train the players to the extent where we're getting the end result at a higher level.
Well, the money factor, Mr. Stanley. What role do you think the money factor? Because obviously, cricketers these days work for a lot of money comparing to before. In those days when we used to see a lot of, Leeward Islands cricketers playing for the West Indies. Now we see big cricketers in the Caribbean aiming to go to the CPL but don't want to represent the West Indies. I guess everybody has a right, and everybody say they are free to do this and they are free to obviously make money. So I'm asking you now, Mr. Stanley, and I'm asking you, Mr. Brand, also, what role do you think this infusion of finance, of money, have played? Have it played a positive role in West Indies cricket, or negative? I would have hoped, or I would thought that it would play a positive, but it seems to have.
I think what it has done, it has probably shifted the focus and the interests of many cricketers to the CPL style of cricket, and I feel that over the last 5 to 10 years, we have seen that the majority of West Indies greater or more talented cricketers on the world stage have taken a greater liking to the CPL, and as a result, I think that the West Indies would have struggled over the last few years in terms of trying to rebuild that one-day team and the test team. We have struggled now to make the World Cup, and when you look at some of the players who
we make the World Cup,
well, that's what I'm saying. We struggled to make it, to make it, right? When you look at some of the players, a lot of their focus have been playing in these various competitions throughout the world. You raise the issue or the concern or the impact of what monies would have had on their performance, and I am not so sure if they are as committed. The caller spoke about in the past we did not necessarily have the kind of coaches, and I know that all of these various islands, their coaches must meet a certain threshold of qualification and proficiency before they can actually start to coach some of these teams. I think that the focus has shifted, and I think that the allegiance to perhaps West Indies cricket is not what it was 20-30 years ago. They are now it's
free agency.
It's a business transaction. It's an arm's length deal. There is not as much patriotism as we would like to see. I know that in the years gone by, the West Indies players would defend West Indies cricket at all costs. I've seen guys play cricket with a broken arm, a broken nose, a broken fingers, and those kind of things. That was the level of commitment to the game and to the West Indies people. I don't think that we have that commitment anymore. The coaches, I am still not so sure if the coaches is the issue.
Well, I am convinced.
I think that a level of commitment has shifted.
I am convinced
Well, okay.
that the coaches have fell down
But
somewhere.
these are coaches who have attained the necessary accreditation to coach.
Well, it doesn't mean that the accreditation level is as expected. So they might be, based on the accreditation at this particular juncture, might be there, but it doesn't mean that they, in real perfection, they have arrived. I don't think they have arrived. Consequently, we have fallen short. It's all right for you to think that you are at a certain level.
Good evening, thank you for holding.
Yeah, good evening. Very interesting program.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, good evening.
Yes, you're on the air. Could you go ahead, caller? Could you listen to your phone?
Program. It's okay to listen to speak the coaches. Where is the play field and the stadium for the youngsters to be encouraged to play cricket in Nevis? That is the biggest problem. Where is the play field and the stadium for the young people to be encouraged to play cricket? Who is helping the young people in Nevis? Where's Willett? Where's Parry? Where's Keith Atherton? Where's Stuart Williams? Nobody really cares. That's when we start at home. We do not care about people. We blame everybody else. Where's the stadium in Nevis? That's the big issue. The politician does not care. You have a good night.
Caller. Okay, I was going to ask the caller, where were those same stadiums and all those other things when Willett and the others were doing well?
I will add to that.
I got to get a break.
Yeah.
This is Talk That Get Results. Edric W. Stanley, Conrad Nair Library, the Honorable Spencer Brand will be back after these.
With all the power from power, this is the powerhouse of the Eastern Caribbean, VON Radio. With all the power from the tower, this is the powerhouse of the Eastern Caribbean, VON Radio, from the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis.
2 acres of flat land located at Hanley's Road, Gingerland is up for sale. This lot is situated on the main road past the Anglican Church. For more information or for serious inquiries, call Mr. Edric Stanley at Stanley's Real Estate at 869-665-5634 or 869-469-3868.
Builder's Paradise is offering a large variety of floor and wall tiles at very competitive prices. Builder's Paradise has over 2 million pieces in stock, lots of different styles to choose from. Whether you're renovating or tiling a new house, Builder's Paradise has what you need. Wow! Oh, and remember, we're open all day Saturday to serve you better. This is something that you can't refuse. Visit Builder's Paradise today at the C.A. Paul Southwell Industrial Site in St. Kitts or call them at 466-4938.
Always satisfying. VON Radio, the powerhouse.
Back on this episode of Thought That Get Results with Edric W. Stanley, Conrad Nye Liber, the Honorable Spencer Brand. Your phone calls on 1-869-469-1616 and or 1700. Gentlemen, if you would allow me, we can still keep this topic open. But I think, Mr. Brand, you had mentioned something earlier in your opening comments referencing the hair policy. No?
No, it wasn't me.
It wasn't you? Okay, let me take this. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Hello, good evening.
You're on
Good
here.
evening.
Good evening.
Hi, this is Pastor Bernard speaking. I'm listening to a discussion on the matter of cricket. And I just came to my mind that one year when I was in Barbados, that's a long time ago, a preacher friend of mine took me to the playfield where Gordon Greenidge and Desmond Haynes developed their talent. And in my humble opinion, Whitehall in Brick Hill had a better playing field than Desmond Haynes and Gordon Greenidge. There was no stands, no anything. A plain field. And they developed their skills there. Having stadiums and all the coaches and everything, not going to make any good cricketers. I look at some of these cricketers who played for St. Kitts Nevis, Patriots. And I could not help but notice these young fellows, the younger ones, had on some massive chains around their neck. And I said it's a miracle that he got the ball on the field. I mean, up to the batsman. And he did not get his hand tangled up in that chain around his neck. These fellows think that they're going to a beauty contest or something. With all this chain and necklace and bracelets, and they got to stop that. Take off the chain. Take off the bracelets and the what do they have? And go back, go play. Learn to play cricket and stop thinking about the fact that they are celebrities. Desmond Haynes and Gordon Greenidge, Elcomedo Willett, and among them, Arterton. They did not have any fanciful playing field, our stadiums and so. They learned with coconut bat and rubber ball. That's what we played with. And so I just thought I'd mention that Gordon Greenidge and Desmond Haynes did not have a fancy playing field. It reminded me of what we had in Whitehall. Thank you.
I thank you very much. It is some details in reference to the question that I was posing, to ask where were these stadiums, etc., etc., etc. But as I was listening to the discussion, though, I was just thinking that if it mightn't be helpful if we were to put a lot of stuff into perspective, because I hear us talking about the CPL, and I hear us talking about monies to play, etc., etc., etc. And I think if we separate a lot of the stuff, right, maybe we might come to a better end. Meaning that, as Carla just mentioned, we had the talent, we didn't have the stadiums, etc. So some of the prescriptions that we're recommending probably wouldn't really work. They may sound fancy and stuff like that, but when tested, because over the years, since we argue that West Indies cricket is failing, we've had a lot of prescriptions, a lot of solutions, and time expose all of them, because we're still not where we want to be. Everything starts with the heart.
Yep.
And what you put it in. Pastor Caller made a point about the chains and the heavy chains and so on that they have in the fashion statement. Well, I get the point that you're trying to make, but I would also argue that you can put on the chains you can put on the fashion clothes and stuff like that, but you can still do very well. The question is whether that is really the problem or the priority. You see, a man can dress great, right? Real fanciful, and do very well, because when he goes into the wicked, that is not what is at the top of his mind. And you know, the other contrary can happen. A man can be there and doing dress fancy and stuff like that, and still ain't make any runs. So it's the thinking, and it's the brain, and also the talent. Because sometimes you can have the idea that, well, you're going to make 100. That's the right way to think. Correct, Brian?
Yes.
The problem you may have, though, you might have the desire to make 100, but I always remind people you're not bowling yourself.
Exactly.
So that can perhaps segue into a point that I wanted to raise. I thought Mr. Brand had raised the point about the hair policy, because I heard in the news that there is a hair policy that the nation has in reference to students, and dress, I suppose, comes along with that, and it's happening across the other islands as well. I heard Antigua highlighted that. And the teachers and the educators seemingly have a problem in getting the students to adhere to the codes. I wonder how is that different to the rest of the society, having the general public adhering to the traffic codes and laws, and then wonder whether or not that don't fit under an entire issue of indiscipline in the society. Because if a person is indisciplined, would we agree that they're just indisciplined and will do it in any other aspect? So how are you going to get the teachers and them, the poor teachers, so to speak, to get these people who don't obey anything else to obey the rules and guidelines that you put down? Good evening, thank you for, please call that. So that's what I wanted to raise.
Basically, the policy has been set. If it is not well thought out, you will not be able to get people to follow those policies. Again, sometimes people take things into their own hands and follow their own dictate.
If the policy is not well thought out.
Right.
Okay. So you make a policy or rule. The people who are supposed to follow it conclude it's not well thought out, so they don't follow it. That's the argument you're making?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
I disagree with Mr. Sally.
Okay. Good evening. Well, good evening. Thank you for holding.
Good evening, Mr. Herbert, and good evening to all.
Good evening.
Sorry to interrupt your topic, but I would like to speak to Mr. Brand.
Yes.
Say thank you. The problem that I had in my walkway, you will know who is talking to you.
Mm-hmm.
I called to say thanks for sending the workers to put something in front of the gate to stop the things that were coming down in my walkway. Since the rain been falling, I haven't had any problems. My walkway's been keeping clean, and I think it is right for me to call in and say thank you, and I pray and hope that nothing else will interrupt, and may God continue to bless you and your work. Continue to do what you have to do, and do it with a purpose. God bless you all. Have a good night.
Thank you, and you're very much welcome.
Okay, Mr. Brand, go ahead and disagree, as you said.
Well, I think that oftentimes policies, in my mind, are well intended, and even though that policies may be well intended, you would always have persons who may not necessarily agree. However, the idea and the aim of any policy, and we talk about the here and the dress code policy, is in my mind to try and bring some semblance of order and decorum and so on to what it is that and we are speaking about the student and the education, to what it is that the education officials were seeking to do. But I think, Webbo, you broaden it into a much wider discussion whether or not there isn't the level of indiscipline across the spectrum in our community. And perhaps putting that in the context of with cricket, I perhaps believe that you are correct, because the discipline that quote unquote those former players once had are not necessarily being reflected as much as perhaps we would like in today's setting. But I think that across the board, across the spectrum, there is that semblance of indiscipline. And go back to the policy from the education official. There would be some pushback. There would be some disagreement, but we are hoping that the policy will try to bring some order. I know that the height of the hair for the boys is about an inch or inch and a half. We have seen where some youngsters have their hair extremely long, and I think, Webbo, that perhaps that some people may also be missing the bigger picture, that when these students leave the school environment and they go out into the work environment, I know that a lot of, or most of, if not all of the establishment need to see their employees carry themselves in a certain way. And if they can begin to understand and appreciate what it is that the education officials are trying to do, they would understand that this would benefit them in the long run. So, in discipline across the board, there is some of it, Webbo, and we can see that in cricket, in business, in people parking on yellow lines. I mean, you name it. It's happening left, right, and center.
So if it is something that is basically generally more accepted across the society, right, and then it becomes a norm, what is the debate all about?
Well, indiscipline should not be readily accepted, as far as I check, because it's nothing positive at all to be indiscipline. You know, policies sometimes cause confusion. There are some who would agree. There are some would find reasons. The question is, you know, is whether or not these policies are reasonable, and some people would question their objectives. But to me, hearing about this, I think it's very important, I do hope that the mothers and the fathers will work with the officials on this, because it's quite across the board in a sense, and I find where it is very necessary, because what I see in the society as it relates to here today and what we call here, you know, the weaves and everything, and you know, along all the way down to the caste and so come on, I don't expect these things to be accepted.
Yeah, but who decides that? Because we had the debate also with the clothing, right? And then it comes, it is something bigger than clothing. It's something bigger than the hair. It is about freedom of speech and constitutional rights and so on and so forth, isn't it?
Yes, it's all about that, but it's also about safety. it's also about a standard that the officials are trying to achieve that encompass such things as safety, most importantly, and what one would consider nuisance, excessivity as it relates to here. It creates nuisance.
But the debate, Naya, who determines what is excess?
But that's what government is for. That's what government is for.
I think that they are best judgment. They are best things that you can appreciate, and you make a determination that this is the policy that we would want. Who determine it? I think that we elect persons to serve in certain capacity, and they come up with some suggestions and some ideas, and oftentimes they feel that this may be the best way forward. Another section of the community will think, well, what you're talking is foolishness, but the policy was laid down, and we are hoping that persons would adhere to it.
It's based on expectation. You set a policy, and you set a certain level of expectation. And if the policy is not working out to the expected results, it means that something went wrong with the policy. So you have to go back to the drawing board and to ensure that the policy that was set has its objective, and its objective will be met. If you have a policy and the objective is for that policy to be A, B, or C, as the case might be, and it doesn't reach the expectation, it means you gotta go back to the drawing board.
But you can't go back to the drawing board if it doesn't get a chance to be implemented. You agree with that?
Well, if it is not implemented, you can't get the desired result.
But that is what I'm saying. So before it is tested, the debate or the
realization.
Yeah, before it is tested, before it is implemented, that's where the argument comes in, that it should not be there at all. So you don't know whether or not it will work. Correct?
Yes.
Yeah, just like laws, I mean, policies are made to because there exists an expectation that things would go a certain way, and of course, but if you don't want them to go that way, then you implement policies to prevent that. It's policies and laws are not actually always made to prevent a situation from coming into effect. Really, and so
you sure you're correct?
Oh yeah, policies and laws are made to prevent a situation from coming into effect. Yes, and it's about the reasonableness of these policies, which of course involves the objectives that the government or the central authority seeks to achieve.
But we will all agree in reference to the HERE policy. It might be different in detail, but there's always been HERE and uniform policy and all that.
Yes.
And there's always been some objection to it and all that, right?
Right.
Okay. The difference may well be now the level of objection and resistance. Correct?
Yes.
Quite so.
But
And we are at a higher level.
as well as the HERE policy and the uniform policy. Ever so often we normally push these policies and so on to the limit and to the extent that somebody have to stop and say, listen, while we say that we would like to keep the boys here low to Spencer Bland may be a bald head, low to Naya may be here in at your shoulder. So to implement a policy that define what low is, and I see that low is an inch or inch and a half, then you basically try as much as possible to try and define what the policy is, because they the policy would probably say something like girls' skirt should not be a certain length above your knees, and then oftentimes that is tested, and then you have to go back and say, well, put it at a particular inch, and you specify. I think that over time, because this policy continue to be tested and persons push them to the limit, you really have to now go down and pin them down and put specifics. I think that is what is happening.
But what we're dealing with today in today's world is it's a society that questions things a lot more than yesteryear or yesterdecade. And that is expected. And yeah, I think Webbo make reference to there's a lot of rights now. There's a lot of reasons that seems to be new reasons at times. But we are living in a society that where people, yes, tends to question things a lot more than before. And of course, policies going to, of course, at times rub against people's expectations and desire. And there are some would find reasons to stand up for what they think is right. But there must be policies, there must be dress codes, and is whether or not they are reasonable and whether or not the objective they seek to achieve are reasonable also.
Well, in my view, it is simple. You figure out a policy, or you have come up with some regiment to put a policy in place, and the level of expectation or what is desired, if you can tell whether or not you have reached the expectation based on what the policy states. If it doesn't reach the expectation, then the policy is flawed. So you have to go back to the drawing board and rethink the policy, redefine the policy, so that it would meet the expected result.
But if you got defiance, if you got those who does not adhere to the policy, that doesn't say the policy is a bad policy.
Exactly.
That simply means that there are people who are defiant and probably have no real reason to
adhere to the policy.
To adhere to the policy.
A policy should not be unreasonable. And as human beings, we have a level of reasonableness. As a result, again, if the policy has not been well thought out, you're going to have resistance to the policy.
So you think you can make a policy that is so well thought out that there is absolutely no resistance by anyone?
Real resistance, genuine resistance, we're talking about. Not somebody who's going to nitpick at something simply to nitpick.
So the question I asked you was whether or not you feel you can make a policy that is so perfect that it gets no resistance.
Well, yes.
Okay.
If you are an unreasonable person, you're going to come up with an unreasonable policy. If you are the one who's attempting to make the policy and for its implementation. But if you are reasonable, you will have look at all the parameters and see.
So you have been in situations where you made policies for any other reason? I'm not referencing government. It could be you're a businessman and so on. And all the policies that you made were resistance proof?
Quite so.
Really?
And I am not going to run away from that position simply because I know I'm a reasonable human being. And in that regard, if I design a policy, it would be a reasonable policy. People, like I said, would nitpick or come up with some bogus reason just to oppose the policy simply because of who designed the policy.
So you're not saying that when you made policies before, you did not have people who did not agree, but it was just that they were bogus resistance.
Quite so.
That's the point you're making.
Yeah.
Well, reasonableness is by nature subjective, Mr. Stanley.
I agree with you in a sense, but I'm saying to you, if you are a reasonable person, you would not come up with a policy that is unreasonable.
Yes, but Mr. Stanley, you may think that you are a reasonable person, but your neighbor or somebody else down the road or across the road may say that Mr. Stanley is a very unreasonable person.
So, Mr. Stanley, if anyone were to say that when you were operating, let's say, your rental or your store or anything of that nature, you had a particular policy or practice which was which work with me, which was not 100%, you would say what? If they said that you had a policy which was not a good policy or which was not fair or anything like that, you would say what?
Demonstrate to me that it is not fair.
Mm-hmm.
Then I would make a decision as to whether this person.
Right. So you never had a policy in your existence and practice that people did not agree with.
No.
Mm-hmm.
That's Mr. Stanley.
No. Again, I'm saying to you, if you are an unreasonable person, you will always come up with an unreasonable policy.
But Mr. Stanley, who determined that you are a reasonable or unreasonable? You cannot do that for yourself as an individual.
Listen, what I'm trying to tell you is not, I am not the arbiter, or I don't pretend to be the arbiter or arbitrator. But if I decide on putting a policy out there, it would be thought out to the extent where it would be given the mark of reasonableness. Again, I go back to the drawing board. If you are an unreasonable person,
Given the mark of reasonableness by who?
if you are an unreasonable person, if you are an intolerant person, you will come up with intolerable positions.
The other area I wanted to raise, today is the 5th, just about 2 weeks away from the 40th anniversary of independence for St. Kitts and Nevis. How have we done?
Well, the good crosses my mind tonight, and I wasn't going to say anything. You know why? Because it is September, and I think independence and the 40th anniversary should be such a thing that is so present in our minds that we would have mentioned something about it. I remember it, but I decided to let me hold back because we probably have next week, and that says a lot, Webbo. The fact that you have not been mentioned by none of the panelists for the night, and I, for one, as I say, I thought about it, but I was even testing my fellow panelists here to see if they were Mr. Stanley have it written down. It was just to see if they were enthusiastic about
And
it.
he has it written down, but it's just that he didn't get a chance to say it.
Yes.
Yeah, well, we still got time.
Maybe he had a policy to to say it just before the show is concluded.
Well,
Okay, so now that I mentioned it,
we are looking forward to our 40th anniversary, and we are hoping that certain policies will be put in place. Certain aspects of independence will be put in place where the nation will appreciate the reasonableness of certain policies and expectations, so that we all will be in agreement with the policies and expectations and programs for the 40th anniversary of our independence. And you don't have to think outside the box, because there is a barometer by which policies to be implemented will be implemented. You just got to go back through the history or to the history of our nation, from whence we came, where we are, where we want to go, and how we're going to go there, how we're going to get there. And certain reasonableness would be at the center of the policy to be implemented.
I'm going to be quite honest that today I passed by the police station in Charlestown and I realized the palm trees was wrapped in the flag, the color of the flag. And it also struck me today, I went to TDC and the palm trees are wrapped in the color of the flag. And I started to wonder if that was there from last year. Because
they just put them up.
They just put them up. Yes, because I have not been hearing much reverberation on the street and amongst the people here on Nevis about independence. You know, that has been that way for a very, very long time. And it's a question I always ask myself, is what does the politician and them really think about this? Especially we over here in Nevis. Why is it they cannot get Nevisians all worked up about independence, the independence celebration? That to me has been a failure. A lot has been tried during the Unity administration, but somehow Nevisians are not in the mood. They have never been in the mood, and I'm not sure if they will be in the mood. I am not sure if some policy can get them in the mood, but we are not enthusiastic about it. It's plain and straight. And I ask myself, what does the politician and them think about this, and how many more anniversary we going to have before maybe they realize that Nevisians are not caught up in this independence thing. And why is it that way?
About 40th anniversary of independence, I believe that St. Kitts and Nevis would have had some successes and obviously failures as well along the way, along the 40th over the 40 years of our independence. I believe, Webbo, that we have seen significant development in our human capital. We have seen some infrastructure development. We have seen that the name of St. Kitts and Nevis, there were times when our name did not fare so well on the regional and international stage. We have had that up and down, oftentimes tense relationship with the between the both governments here on Nevis and on St. Kitts. So we have had our successes and failures. Naya raised an important point, that the enthusiasm about independence on the island of Nevis has always been one over the years that many persons have questioned. Is it that Nevisians are still not wholeheartedly thinking and feeling and embracing that we are a part of an independent nation, or is it that we are still waiting for something else to occur? But I feel that the relationship between the peoples of St. Kitts and Nevis, that in my mind continue to remain solid. I don't believe that we would ever see a change. We continue to intermingle. We continue to interact with each other over the 40 years before and before. But I think that there continue to always be that concern that in persons in Nevis, that big brother, smaller brother, do we see that fairness in the whole setup and in the whole structure? But I think, Webbo, that over the 40 years we have come some ways. We have seen some developments. We have seen some improvements. We still certainly do have some challenges. Over the years, we have wrestled with the issue of crime and criminality, and that has really left a few dark chapters in our history. Many attempts were tried, many different strategies were tried, many different policies were implemented to try and wrestle that particular issue. But I think that if we were to take an objective look, a fair-minded look, I believe that we have made some progress in many of the areas that we sought to get developed. I personally feel that our people, our human capacity development of our people, we have seen great strides in that area. And I think that as a nation, as a people, if it's one column that I think that we can tick and be proud of, is the development of our people. We have stood amongst the greatest nations on the face of the earth, and I feel that the people from St. Kitts and Nevis have equipped themselves well. They have represented us well. We still have some ways to go. I still feel, Webbo, that as a nation, we have other infrastructural development that we want to see. Both islands, because of global warming, we are facing issues and challenges as it relates to water. We are pursuing green energy as it relates to protecting our environment. Those are areas I think, Webbo, that we have come some ways in our sporting development. A caller earlier made mention about stadiums and so on. There is always that ambition for us to see some of those facilities constructed, both here in Nevis and on St. Kitts. But I think across the board, Webbo, I would end where I started, that we have had some successes. I believe more successes than failures, and I think that after 40 years, perhaps we can introduce the Stanley Doctrine. And Mr. Stanley have always been one of those long advocates for serious constitutional reform, and we can have that argument, what in the constitution will be reformed. But I think that there is now the talk about whether St. Kitts and Nevis need to become a republic. I believe that's a conversation going forward. The peoples of St. Kitts and Nevis will continue to have, and whatever the decision is, I feel that we will continue to be a people that continue to intermingle and intermix with each other. I don't see, Webbo, regardless of what the political landscape will look like in the next 40 years, I don't see that the peoples of St. Kitts and Nevis will ever withdraw themselves from each other.
Let me get a break and come back. This is Tallk That Get Results with Edric W. Stanley. Conrad Nile Library, the Honorable Spencer Brand. Your phone calls on 1-869-469-1616 and or 1700. We're back after these.
2 acres of flat land located at Hanley's Road, Gingerland is up for sale. This lot is situated on the main road past the Anglican Church. For more information or for serious inquiries, call Mr. Edric Stanley at Stanley's Real Estate at 869-665-5634 or 869-469-3868.
Sugar City St. Kitts. Keep it sweet. Keep listening to Vaughn.
Back on this episode of Thought That Get Results with the Honorable Spencer Brand, Conrad Nile Library, Edric W. Stanley. Your phone calls on 1-869-469-1616 and or 1700. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Good evening, Webbo, and your guest.
Yes.
Webbo, you're talking about this independence business, and I tend to agree with Naya. From the inception, the national anthem was composed by a petition. The national flag was created by a petition. The coat of arms, a petition. National dish, petition. The national dress, all of these was created by petition. So it's like where the division, fall in the scheme of things. So, from the inception, we've been always like on the outside looking in. And so we don't feel like we are a part of the whole setup. You understand what I'm saying? I mean, when you look at all these emblems or whatever you want to call them, created by petitions, like, so what are we? What are we? An afterthought, a byproduct? You understand what I'm saying? So when independence come around, we don't feel no big tug to get involved in it. There's no sentimental nothing about it. Last year I went to the park to look at the parade. I mean, it was as sloppy as ever. The whole parade, even down to the police, it was really, really sloppy. From in the days when I was a uniform body, back in the what it was, statehood days, the parade was just sloppy. The national anthem started to play, and I mean, I didn't even realize, well, this was the national anthem. Somebody next to me had to tell me, why the national anthem plays, so I kind of gathered myself and started to, stand in attention. So it's like they don't have no big significance. For me, I don't feel nothing when I hear the national anthem. I mean, it's a nice song. I love playing it. The music is great, but other than that, it's like a big fat zero, man. So maybe that's something for us to think about.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Well, it's happening, and I would like to hear a politician's reaction to what we're talking about. Divisions not feeling worked up about the independence celebration. Mr. Banyer here, and you spoke a lot about our achievements and our journey. It's quite a journey. But what I have not realized is that settlement between the islands, political settlements. I mean, St. Kitts and Nevis people are one. You cannot separate. We are black people. We come here on the same ship. We live next to each other. But there is something that prevents Nevis or Nevisians from feeling worked up.
Naya, with reference to what you said, hearing from the politicians, will you get an answer depending on whether they're in government or not at the time?
That's a very good question, Webbo. I mean, for us over here, to be quite honest with you, because both political parties out here is tight-lipped about Nevis' future as it relates to Sinkits, political future as it relates to Sinkits, I would think that they both would be saying the same thing, or they both would not be saying anything at all. But over on Sinkits, the politicians there might have something more to say, because they realize and recognize the reasons why. We here in Nevis, as politicians, know the reasons why, but we're afraid to talk the reasons why. And so there's that vacant space.
But don't we have a problem, though, that when independence is being celebrated, you don't get full participation or much participation from the political or politicians that are not in power at the time? And independence, some will argue, is not supposed to be like that. Independence is what you call it, Edric, apolitical?
Yes. Well, for me, if you are a person with some degree of reasonableness, you will always create or try to create a level playing field which you will not have rancorous debate about anything. A fellow called just a while ago and he talked about the flag and the other aspects of independence, and felt that Nevisians have not been participants or have not participated. And it may not be a lack of Nevisians of not participating, but just the lack of interest or being creative to the point where there would be inclusion in what has been created, whether it is the national flag or the national anthem, whatever he has mentioned. So if we are laid back to the point where Sinkits has to be at the forefront of these creativity, and there is no participation from Nevisians, I can't tell you that is a factual occurrence, because there might have been. It's just that we may not have reached to the level.
And those things, I think how it worked was that you made entries.
Right, okay.
Make entries, and
so
you.
If we made entries, and if there had been a bias aspect toward Nevisian participation, then that is something that is repugnant, abhorrent, bad. But if Nevisians have participated, and in the true competition, the true evaluation of what had been created had been fair and reasonable, we should not feel that we are left out simply because we may not have had the creativity or the desire to reach to that level. The song of Dinda stated, we were licked out of the wicket at 29, but we were able at a certain juncture in our history to have surpassed syndicates with regard to our cricket and maybe with other things. But again, if we are focused and we are able to recognize the unlevelness of the playing field, then we have a right to criticize. But if, for whatever reason, we have participated and we have not reached to the level of the competition, as the case might be, we should not criticize. Well, we should strive always to be lazily focused on the activities of nationhood, to the extent we are creative enough to be part of the national anthem, to be part of the national flag, to be part of whatever is nation building. We know there are times when people will just get trouble. But if you're a reasonable person and you see things from a level playing field, you wouldn't criticize. So let's get our hands on deck in terms of nation building and become participants rather than antagonists, rather than being antagonists or antagonistic. So I am saying to all individuals.
Let me get this. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Good night, Webbo.
Yes.
And good night, Tanya. Good night. Good night, Naya.
Good night.
I am here listening to the program and it's all interesting. But my little input tonight, that look how, okay, we think it is a federal, think it means raise the same flag, right? Is one state when it comes to nationality, right? And just look how, my thinking, just look how New Vision come down and participate in our national carnival. It can be so with the independent, because most of the activities them have been synced. I don't know if Nevis Island administration is interested to keep no celebration for independence. But I believe that is one state, federal state, and I believe that Nevis come down, police come down, and independent the parade there, everybody parade together and do what they got to do. And if you got any activities, the activities share in sync with the Nevis. You understand? The activities like independent share in sync with the Nevis. Just look how they had the independent Calypso show back and the 1980 under the Farmer administration, the Simmons administration. Remember when Fancy became the first independent king? You understand? So I just want to know if that cannot be the work out that, because I believe that I don't see no problem and a biasness with the independent celebration if Nigeria come down and celebrate with us. Just look how they come down and celebrate in our national carnival, and we go up and we celebrate. We celebrate in the culture, because the culture is not a national, but we go up and we celebrate with it too. All right, then I will listen to yourself there. Interesting program.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, let me say this. I think it was Naya and a previous caller spoke about the lack of enthusiasm by individuals to participate in our independence celebration. The reality is, Webbo, that the island of Nevis have had this long-standing struggle, this long-standing desire, this long-standing dream of quote-unquote raising their own flag. And I think that the independence order of 1983 did not necessarily sit well with a lot of Nivisians, and it has been a long struggle. We have persisted with it for 40 years now. But I feel, Webbo, that the lack of enthusiasm by Nivisians is that there is still that desire, there is still that thirst, there is still that dream of quote unquote raising their own flag. I hear what the caller have said, and I've said it before, that I do not believe that we will ever be able to separate the people of St. Kitts and Nevis from each other. I don't see that can ever happen. We are intertwined, we are interwoven. I believe that the challenge that we have had over the many years, even before independence, has always been the political discourse and the political interaction and the political relationship between both islands. There have been instances and times when the people of Nevis felt that they have been hard done. And I think that those are some of the issues that I feel would have created and continue to create the lack of enthusiasm on the part of Nivisians.
Well, like I said, my focus as a Nivisian and as a national of St. Kitts Nevis is for us to engage in nation building without rancor.
We are still hoping for equality, fair share. These are matters that have been there from the inception of this independence thing. Nevis just has been treated badly.
That's the last word. This program repeats tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock following the VON News Minute. Join the Honorable Matt Brantley tomorrow evening at 8 o'clock for On the Mat. Thank you all again for joining us. This is your voice in the community. Talk that get results. You all have a wonderful evening.